So, hello, folks. Today we'll talk about demand and supply, and this would definitely be a part of the demand analysis that we've been talking about. The first question of what to produce, if you remember, we talked about understanding concepts like utility in the class. We understood that the term utility. If I talk about utility, then utility deals with the idea of value creation, if you remember. So value creation is all about creating projects and services that find some utility for the customers, and the customers that you actually try to serve become your segment or the target market. So the utility, as we had discussed, is both subjective and relative, if you remember. Subjective utility talked about how utility varies from person to person. Different people have their different taste and preferences. What product which may be carrying utility for one may not be carrying utility to the other. While if we talk about relativity, it talks about the same utility changing for the same individual at different point in time. So if you're thirsty, one may prefer to grab a bottle of Coke, while the other may not be very keen on an aerated beverage and would like to have a fresh juice instead. That's subjectivity. While the same person who's been drinking a bottle of Coke or a mug of fresh juice might not enjoy the same Coke or same juice at a different point in time when you're not so thirsty, or probably when the weather is pretty cold, and or whatever the situation may be, you may not carry the same amount of liking for the product. So utility can be both relative and subjective. This makes the decisions of consumers a little more challenging, and at the same time predicting the consumer behavior a little more challenging at different points in time. The second important aspect of utility, if we remember, we talked about not only being subjective and relative, but we also talked about utility involving value in use and value in exchange. So when I say value in use and when I talk about value in exchange, the value in use talked about very important aspects about the utility not only existing within the product, but also in the intensity of desire of the consumer. That means collectively utility is a marriage between the features of the product and the desire of the consumer. When both of them complement each other, the utility of a product goes high, or the value of the product goes high in the minds of the consumers. For example, a cigarette or any sin good like alcohol might carry some utility, some value in use. But for somebody who admires having these products, or has a craving for these products, or has a taste for these products, the utility of the product overall may be high. While for somebody who's aversive to tobacco or to liquor or to alcohol, the product may not carry any utility as such. So this shows that utility partially lies in the product and partially in the intensity of desire of the consumer. And when both of these complement each other, the utility of the product is defined. So this utility refers to the value in use, which is obviously in the product. But to a great extent, the value in exchange comes from the intensity of desire of the consumer and the availability of that product in the market, which means that, for example, if there's a movie released on a particular day this week, obviously on a specific day this week, the people wishing to watch that movie the first day first show would like to pay a higher price for the ticket. So the value in use may be the same for every ticket, but for certain consumers, the intensity of desire to watch it on day one is much more higher than the other people who can wait for the next day and pay the normal price for that ticket. So some people will go out of the way, they would pay a higher price, and the value of exchange will be determined by the intensity of desire. The intensity of desire is also complemented with the number of units of the product available. If there's a scarcity of the product in the market, then the value in exchange will go up, while if the product is available in abundance, the supply is sufficient, the value in exchange might go down. This is visible in a very interesting concept which was discussed in the class, the water diamond paradox, that water, on one hand, just like air and water being the most important probably things that you would require for your existence, normally if you see the price is so low, they're as good as free. We breathe air without paying a price for it. And when we consume water, there's a very, very, negligible amount that you pay given the value that water carries in our life. On the other hand, a diamond might cost you a fortune despite having no utility in terms of practical utility in terms of use, and may not be even important for your survival. So this shows that products which are in abundance might not be able to charge a high value in exchange, while the products which are in scarcity, despite being of not great use, might be able to fetch a high value or a price or a value in exchange. So that's called the paradox. And in economics, this paradox plays a very important role because scarcity as a concept plays a very important role in determining the value of exchange of a product and therefore the prices of those products. So we'll move on and build on this concept of utility in our understanding of the concept of demand now in this session. So I would first like to talk about demand. We've talked about this in great detail in the class, so we'll just quickly cover this, that demand is nothing but an effective desire. Demand is nothing but an effective desire. Now, what is an effective desire? A desire becomes effective when that desire is backed by the ability or the purchasing power to purchase that product. So whenever a desire is backed by purchasing power, it is a combination of willingness and ability. So desire is nothing but a willingness to buy a product, and purchasing power is nothing but the ability to buy the product. And when the both of them combine together, the desire is backed by an ability to purchase the product, and this qualifies as an effective demand. So if you ask people in general if they wish to fly in an aircraft, maybe the entire set of people, unless they're afraid of flying in an aeroplane or they have phobia with the height, they would generally say yes to it. But that doesn't mean that you would prepare a product or create a product considering that entire demand in the market, because many of them may not be able to afford it. So when willingness is complemented with ability or purchasing power, it qualifies, the desire qualifies to be a demand, and that's an important point that we need to understand. So this was demand, and now we talk about supply precisely. So when we talk about supply, supply on the other hand is the quantity of goods and services that are available for sales in the market at a given point in time. So supply as a concept is also slightly different from the concept or the idea of production, from the idea of stock. It is actually the amount of goods and services that are made available in the market at a given point in time. So there could be a possibility that the production was X units or N number of units in a particular period at a particular point in time, while out of this, a part of this was sold, which we may call it X dash, and so what you were left was the stock for that particular period of time. And next time, this stock might not only be available in the market for sales, but at the same time, the next set of goods and services that have been produced might also be available along with the existing stock. So that would be the new supply in the market. So supply varies from the concept of production or the output and the stock. However, it definitely depends on these two factors. So considering demand, which is an effective desire, and in simple words, the quantity of goods and services that people are not only willing to buy, but based on the purchasing power and based on the opportunity to purchase, like for example the concept of EMIs, easy monthly installments. There are a lot of products which consumers may not directly be in a position to buy if they were to pay an upfront price for it, but because of the EMIs, there are a lot of people who find this product to be affordable. So the actual number of units that people are willing to buy and able to buy would qualify to be a demand of a product, and on the other hand, the quantity available in the market at a given point in time for purchase will be the supply. So these demand and supply of a particular product determine collectively the price of a product in the market. And so we'll now be talking about how demand and supply are affected by different factors, including the price, and how these two factors further affect the price in turn, and that's how the market dynamics works. So we'll be talking about these aspects now. So before we go ahead, let us just try to understand how normally demand works. So demand, if we understand for a commodity X, is nothing but a function of various factors, including, and this we've done in detail in the class, including the price of the commodity, the price of other goods. It could be income of the consumers. It could be the taste and preferences of the people. It could be the state of technology. It can also be the government policies and plenty the size of the population, etc., etc. So various factors can have an impact on the demand of a particular commodity, and this is what makes the market, the demand for a product, dynamic in the market. And if you remember the previous concepts wherein I had talked about the concept of wants and desires being ever changing and everlasting. If you remember, we talked about the factors leading to the wants and desires being ever changing and everlasting was dependent on the concept of utility. That just because the utility was subjective and at the same time relative, so what happens is there is a stack of needs or wants and desires that we have, and let's say the most important desire is at the top, and in the descending order of the importance. Once a desire at the top is satisfied, let's say you're thirsty and you drink a glass of water, the desire for water or thirst goes down in the queue, and the next desire, which was probably for food, becomes the most important. And at that time, food which was not as high in intensity as thirst now becomes the most intensified desire of an individual. And similarly, when the desires keep on getting met and new desires keep on arising, the wants become ever changing. The concept of everlasting is that once a need or a want or a desire is satisfied, it is not necessary that it is satisfied once and for all. There is a possibility that over a period of time, again, that desire might come into picture, and that's like you might be thirsty, you drink a glass of water, you quench your thirst, but then there is again a possibility that at some point of the day you may again feel thirsty and the demand might again rise. If I connect this with the whole idea of Maslow's hierarchy, which you might have studied in OB and HR, because economics deals with, as I said, it deals with human behavior, it deals with psychology, it deals with rationality, it deals with different other aspects of human behavior. It is primarily behavioral economics, and so the foundation of economics would help you in almost every subject or aspect of management, whether it is marketing, HR, finance, organizational behavior, or any other subject or strategy for that matter. So even the concept of Maslow's hierarchy, if we see, if the most important physiological needs are met, one moves up to the safety needs. From the safety needs, you might move on to the social needs and the esteem needs, and then move on to actualization. And there is a possibility that one at a point in time might again fall down to the previous level need in case of some deficiencies. So that's the whole idea, and the whole concept comes from the idea of utility. So when we talk about demand, the demand, obviously, because of the desire being ever changing and everlasting, the demand can also be dynamic in nature. Different customers would have different likings, tastes, and preferences, and at different point in time, in different situations, these preferences, tastes, and desires might even keep changing, which makes the entire idea of dealing with consumer behavior very challenging. With innovations, with science and technology, with a lot of inventions and discoveries happening, with promotions, branding, and so many other things happening, it becomes a highly competitive environment, a highly, I would say, challenging landscape for businesses to operate and estimate consumers' behavior and their demand. So these are the factors that may affect demand of a commodity. On the other hand, if I talk about the supply, supply is also a function of various factors. Certain factors may be common to demand, certain factors may be very different. To begin with, let's talk about the price of the commodity. Again, this happens to be a common factor both with demand and supply. So, on one hand, the price of a commodity affects its demand. Now, how does the price affect demand? We'll talk about this in detail subsequently, but then if we're talking about normal goods, as of now, let's understand a normal good is something which is frequently purchased or regularly purchased, which has a large number of substitutes, and at the same time, these products have a reasonable good part of your budget. They are neither a very insignificant part or a substantially high part of your budget. They are neither necessities or luxuries. And so, given these factors, there is a law of diminishing marginal utility applying to these products. So such products normally qualify to be called as normal goods. So in case of normal goods, which are regularly purchased and which have substitutes available and which have alternate uses, these products are called normal goods. So in case of normal goods, it has been observed that the price and the demand have an inverse relationship. That means if the price of a product goes up, the demand falls, and vice versa. There could be luxuries, there could be necessities, which may not probably always behave in the same manner. For certain luxury or goods of conspicuous consumption, if the price goes high, there might be a higher demand for such products because a falling price might appear that the product is no more extreme luxury or a conspicuous product. And the people who wish to buy such products may abstain from buying products when they become cheaper. So normal goods, we see that there's an inverse relationship. Similarly, the price of other goods we have discussed in the class, it could be other goods or related goods can be the supplement, the substitutes and the complementary goods. So the price of the substitute or complementary goods might also have an influence on the demand. We had talked about this, that if the price of a substitute good rises, right, we may say it's demand falling, but at the same time the demand for a product X rising because it is a substitute. So the price of a substitute good and the demand of the other good have positive relationship, while for complementary goods, the price of a complementary good against the demand for another good might have inverse relationship. Income, again, in general, for normal goods has a positive relationship with the demand. Higher the income, higher the demand. Lower the income, lower the demand for products. Population can influence the demand. Higher the population, greater the demand for products and services in general. The government policies, if they are favorable, the demand may go up. If they are unfavorable to the product, the demand may go down. And similarly, state of technology might encourage the demand for newer products, and at the same time, taste and preferences, if favorable, may lead to a rise in demand, while unfavorable taste and preferences of product being obsolete, moving out of fashion and trend, might lead to a fall in the demand. So these are various factors that affect the demand. If we talk about supply, there could be the price of the commodity. It could also be at the same time the availability of factors of production. It could also be related to the cost of production or procurement. So availability affects the cost of raw material, the labor, the capital, and so many other factors involved in production. And so the availability and the cost of these factors of production can also affect the supply of a commodity. Higher the cost of production, lesser the supply. Lower the cost of production, higher the supply. While when we talk about various other factors, there could be some common factors like technology. Latest technology might lead to a rise in the supply of the goods because there could be possibility of a much faster scale and a larger scale of production happening because of technology. The government policies might also affect directly the supply of goods and services based on the government policies. Certain products might be restricted, prohibited by the governments, and so it may lead to a fall in the supply, while some products might be encouraged by the governments, and you might find an increase in the supply and production of those goods and services. And there could be a number of factors at the same time, the climatic conditions and various other factors. But the most important factors that we would initially talk about are the price and the relation of price with the demand and the supply. So whenever we study the impact of price as an independent factor, and demand and supply as a dependent factor, we call this relationship normally as the law of demand and law of supply. While all other factors which affect the demand or supply are assumed to be constant for ease of study. So if I talk about the relationship between price and demand alone, we see that the demand of a commodity happens to have or holds an inverse relationship against the price of a commodity in case of normal goods, which means